Good afternoon, dear chairs and participants. Topic of our study is the phenomenon of political correctness in modern English. To start with, we consider the term political correctness. We define the term as the formation of language behavior to minimize or avoid discrimination against certain social groups, national, ethnic, religious, and sexual minorities, or women, people with disabilities, different social status, the elderly. According to Collins' dictionary, political correctness is demonstrating progressive ideals, especially by avoiding vocabulary that is considered offensive, discriminatory, or judgmental, especially concerning race and gender. The phenomenon of political correctness is associated with a change in language norms in English at the present stage. This is primarily expressed in the creation of certain restrictions or a complete prohibition on the use of certain words and phrases in a particular situation. It should be noted that a number of terms have been formed different types of discrimination. Ableism is discrimination against people with disabilities. Ethnocentrism is discrimination human cultures other than the dominant. Heterosexism is discrimination the rights of people with different sexual orientations. Lookism is creating standards of attractiveness and beauty and discriminating against people who do not meet such standards. Ageism is discrimination against the elderly. Heightism is a discrimination against tall people, and classism is class discrimination. It should also be noted that the concept of political correctness has given to a number of related concepts. Eco-correctness, a correct ecological policy, the right attitude to the environment. Emotional correctness is accepted feeling and emotions in society. Dress correctness is adopted uniforms. Religious correctness is tolerance of representatives of different religions. Thus, political correctness is interpreted as the tendency manifested in the desire to find new ways of language expression instead of those that affect the feeling and dignity of the individuals. Behavioral and linguistic phenomena that reflect the desire to overcome existing speakers in the community and society perceive discrimination against various members of the society. Ideological political movement in the 80s, 90s years in the US, which spreads mainly within liberal groups and that is imposing strict compliance, neutral language regarding gender, high sexual orientation, race, civil rights, and restrict freedom of speech in the discussion of the above topics. Analysis of definitions allowed us to identify two most important aspects of political correctness. The first one is social-cultural aspect, which closely related to ideology and politics, especially in the field of education. Linguistic aspect, which is manifested in the search for new meaning of the linguistic expressions and the correction of language code. A necessary condition for the political correctness of language is to avoid the use of lexical items that may discriminate against the addressee in terms of age, gender, physical condition, social status, race, and cultural affiliation. Thus, politically incorrect vocabulary consists of euphemisms that help to avoid negative evaluative prospects of expression. The large number of euphemistic substitutions variants have appeared in the language. We worked with 859 units in our study and demonstrated 6 thematic fields covered by politically correct vocabulary. The first one is euphemism associated with groups of people that exposes discrimination. It includes racial discrimination, cultural, religious, sexual discrimination, discrimination against sexual minorities, discrimination in general, and other types of discrimination. The second group is euphemism denoting terrible and unpleasant phenomena of reality, which consist of death, diseases, natural needs, physical disabilities, mental and psychiatric disorders. The third group is euphemism associated with the influence of the state of people's life. It includes military action, social violence, poverty, non-prestigious professions, family, institutions of state supervision, quit academic failure. The fourth group is euphemism denoting appearance and age of the person, which consists of weight, age, appearance, and height. The fifth thematic group is euphemism indicating human impact on flora and fauna. And the sixth one is humorous euphemism, parodies of political correctness. A large group of euphemisms is created on the principle of politeness. This group usually includes words and expressions that alleviate various types of discrimination. Euphemisms that mitigate age discrimination. It appeared even term ageism, oppression of people of a certain age. In order not to offend people of respectable age, the word middle sense has appeared in language of recent decades, a period of life from 40 to 65 years. People over 65 were called third age. Avoid using the word old instead of common euphemisms such as senior, major, and seasoned. The second subgroup, euphemisms that mitigate property discrimination. The reason for the creation of such euphemism is often the desire of authorities of various ranks to smooth out the problems of the property inequality. The third subgroup is euphemisms that exclude discrimination against people with physical and mental disabilities. Word cripple substitute euphemism differently abled, physically different, or handicapable. Fat substitute on big boned, differently sized. Instead, bald used hair disadvantaged. Instead, deaf, orally inconvenienced. Instead, blind, unseen. Mentally retarded people are called learning disabled, special mentally charged people. The fourth subgroup is euphemisms that mitigate racial and ethnic discrimination. Word black is replaced by a euphemism member of the African diaspora, Indian by word indigenous person. Another group of euphemistic vocabulary is euphemism which distract from a negative phenomena of reality. This group should be divided into several subgroups. The first is euphemism absurd the guise of aggressive military action. The second subgroup is euphemism associated with negative consequence in the socio-economic sphere. The third subgroup is euphemism associated with crime. Subgroup with euphemisms that serve the guise of aggressive military action. In example, the word involvement and conflict replaced by aggression, war, destroy armed resistance became no pacification. Instead of word bomb, use the word device. Instead of bombing, limited airstrike or air support. Euphemism strategic hamlet replaced by concentration camp. Finally, the dead were called body count or inoperative combat personnel. Second subgroup, euphemisms associated with negative consequence in the socio-economic sphere. More modern terms in the meaning of the economic crisis include period of economic adjustment, period of negative economic growth, meaningful downturn. The third subgroup, euphemism associated with crime, euphemism correctional facilities replaced by a word prison, correctional officers, or custodial officers, replacing the former expression prison guards. The prisoner called clients of correctional system, guests, or people enjoying temporary hospitality from the state. As our study of 859 language units showed, the issue of racial discrimination are of the greatest importance for the tendency to political correctness. The vocabulary of the subgroup racial, cultural, religious discrimination is 21% of the total number of euphemisms. Fighting gender discrimination represents a crucial importance for political correctness. The vocabulary of the subgroup sex discrimination is 19% of the actual material. 9.7% of the actual material belong to the subgroup humorous euphemism. This suggests that a large part of the population perceives political correctness ironically. The subgroup Physical disabilities is 4.5% and discrimination against sexual minorities is 3%, are not represented by a very large number of politically correct euphemisms. Thank you for your attention.